In the town of Yomiyama, there's a rumor going around about a curse that haunts Class 3-3 of Yomiyama North Middle School. It all began 26 years ago with the death of a student named Misaki, smart, attractive, and popular. Since their first year, Misaki was well liked by both teachers and classmates. But just as their third year began, Misaki died in a sudden accident, or so they said. The entire class was shaken by the loss. Then, one day, a classmate pointed at Misaki's empty desk and said, "Misaki is there. Misaki isn't dead." From that moment on, the class began acting as if Misaki was still alive. Teachers also played along, and even the principal went so far as to reserve a seat for Misaki at the graduation ceremony. The story didn't end there. Fast forward to the current year, 1998. Middle school student Sakikabara Kouichi has just moved from Tokyo to Yomiyama to live with his maternal grandparents while his father works in India. His mother, Ritsuko, has passed away. Kouichi has to spend his first month in Yomiyama hospitalized due to a lung disease. While recovering, his aunt Reiko reveals that he's going to attend Yomiyama North Middle School, the same school where both she and Ritsuko studied. Reiko herself attended the school around 14 years ago. During his stay at the hospital, Kouichi befriends a nurse named Mizuno Sanai, who shares his love for horror novels. He also gets a visit from 3 classmates, class representatives Kazami Tomohiko and Sakuragi Yukari, along with Akazawa Izumi, the girl in charge of countermeasures. Though they seem friendly enough, there's something off about their behavior. Yukari bombards Kouichi with questions such as why he moved to Yomiyama and whether this is his first time living there. Kouichi simply explains that he came for family reasons and has visited the town before, but never actually lived there. Izumi presses further, asking if he stayed long during his past visits. Unsure, Kouichi admits that he doesn't remember since he was just a child. Before the 3 students leave, Izumi shakes Kouichi's hand and asks for his cooperation. At this moment, the atmosphere shifts. Suddenly, all 3 of them seem tense. Then, as if needing extra confirmation, Izumi once again asks whether Kouichi truly has never lived in Yomiyama. Kouichi gives the same simple answer: he hasn't. At night, Kouichi takes the elevator down. He isn't alone there. Standing beside him is a girl with an eye patch carrying a strange doll, her presence wrapped in an unsettling, dark aura. Seeing the Yomiyama North uniform she's wearing, Kouichi attempts to make small talk, asking why she's heading to the 2nd basement floor, but her response is cryptic. She mentions having something to deliver, and speaks vaguely about another version of herself waiting for her. The elevator descends in silence. When the doors finally slide open, Mei steps out onto the 2nd basement floor, where the morgue is located. Before vanishing into the shadows, she reveals that her name is Misaki Mei. In May, Kouichi is finally able to go to school. Before his first day at Yomiyama North, he recalls Reiko's warnings about the things he should pay attention to in class. One of them is to always obey the class rules. But just as he tries to remember Reiko's next warning, his grandmother calls him for breakfast, pulling him out of his thoughts. At school, Class 3-3's homeroom and vice homeroom teachers, Mr. Kubadera and Ms. Mikami, help him settle in. As he takes his seat, he glances around the classroom. That's when he notices her. Sitting in the back corner is Mei, the eerie girl he met in a hospital elevator. During recess, Kouichi finds himself surrounded by curious classmates, all eager to ask him questions. They want to know about his life in Tokyo, his father's job as a researcher abroad, and even his taste in women. The atmosphere is warm and welcoming, until his gaze unintentionally drifts toward Mei's desk. That's when his classmates start to give him a suspicious look. Sensing the sudden tension, Tomohiko discreetly gives a signal to Teshigawara Naoya, who quickly offers to give Kouichi a tour of the school. Later, during physical education, Kouichi needs to sit out because of his physical condition. As he watches the class activity from afar, he befriends Takabayashi Ikuo, a student with a heart condition who also can't participate. Suddenly, Ikuo feels weak, so he heads to the infirmary. Soon after, Yukari approaches Kouichi. She's also skipping class due to a leg injury. Yukari carefully asks whether Naoya, Tomohiko, and the others mentioned something during the tour of the school, but Kouichi assures her they simply showed him around. Hearing this, Yukari feels relieved. She says that Izumi would be angry if they weren't being careful. Suddenly, Kouichi freezes Yukari with a question. Where is Misaki Mei? Looking genuinely terrified and speechless, Sakuragi can only shake her head. Before he can press further, Kouichi's eyes catch Mei, standing alone on the rooftop. Without hesitation, he moves to approach her. On the rooftop, Mei is quietly drawing. Kouichi tries to ask her if she remembers him from the hospital, but she shakes her head. Undeterred, he presses her with questions. Why did she go to the basement? Was she delivering the doll? But Mei remains elusive, offering only a vague response. She says that something sad happened that day. Then, almost as if testing him, she asks if he truly knows nothing at all. Kouichi stands there, unable to understand what she's implying. Mei then warns him not to get close or talk to her. When asked why, she only says that he'll find out soon enough. With that, she walks away, leaving behind a lingering sense of gloom. Later, while Kouichi is talking with Naoya and Mochizuki Yuya, Naoya accidentally blurts out his anxiety about being in the cursed class 3-3. Realizing that he can't undo what he's done, he decides to just tell Kouichi the truth, even though Yuya isn't sure about it. But before Naoya can say anything, Kouichi's attention drifts elsewhere. He spots Mei inside the library, and without a second thought, walks off to approach her. Mei herself is sketching. Despite her earlier warning to stay away, Kouichi tries once again to strike up a conversation. This time, he asks why she always covers her left eye, but Mei doesn't seem inclined to answer. All of a sudden, Mr. Chibiki, the librarian, appears and tells Kouichi to return to class. Since they've never met, they briefly introduce themselves before Mr. Chibiki repeats his instruction. Yet, for some reason, while Kouichi is told to leave, Mei is allowed to stay. Later at night, Kouichi heads to the hospital to visit his nurse friend Sanae to ask if any girl died the previous Monday, back when he was still hospitalized. Sanae thinks for a moment, but doesn't recall any deaths among the patients she handled. Kouichi proceeds to ask Sanae if she saw a short-haired girl in a school uniform, wearing an eye patch over her left eye. Sanae doesn't remember seeing anyone like that, but after thinking it over, she does recall hearing about a young patient who passed away. However, she still needs to confirm it. She promises to call Kouichi once she finds out the name of that patient, but as an exchange, she wants Kouichi to tell his reason later. The next day, Kouichi notices that Mei is absent from her desk. Instead, Izumi is present, and she keeps a close watch on him as if monitoring his every move. Once classes are over, she calls Kouichi aside to talk. Again, she wants to confirm his history in Yomiyama. Kouichi explains that he was born in Yomiyama Hospital, but moved to Tokyo immediately after. His mother died giving birth to him, so he rarely visited the town. He finally asks why she keeps bringing it up. According to Izumi, she feels like she's met Kouichi before, so she just wanted to make sure. She might be mistaken, yet the uncertainty frustrates her. While Kouichi is at it, he asks Izumi what it means to be in charge of countermeasure. Izumi explains that it involves taking preventive actions to protect the class, but this only confuses him further. Izumi decides to reveal the class's rules and conditions. However, Sakuragi and Yuya quickly stop her from speaking. They pull Izumi away. Whispering in hushed voices, Izumi groans in frustration, muttering that everything turned chaotic while she was absent. At the same time, Mei walks past them. Without a second thought, Kouichi ignores his three classmates and follows her. Izumi's displeasure is clear. Kouichi keeps following Mei until she disappears in a small intersection. Though he loses sight of her, his instincts push him forward. Eventually, he stops in front of a small building called M Studio. For a moment, he's startled by a shadowy figure behind the window. But as he takes a closer look, he immediately realizes that it's just a doll on display. Just then, Kouichi gets a call from Sanae. She's managed to dig up some information about the deceased girl. The girl was a middle schooler and an only child, but Sanae can't really remember her name. But it was either Misaki or Masaki. Kouichi is shocked to hear that. He then decides to enter the building before him, which turns out to be a doll gallery. He's greeted by an old lady named Amane. As he wanders through the gallery, Kouichi takes in the eerie collection of dolls, some hauntingly lifelike, others unfinished and unsettling. The dim lighting only adds to the strange atmosphere. Descending to the lower level, his eyes land on a particular doll that sends a chill down his spine. Its face resembles someone's face he knows too well, Misaki Mei. He talks to it, asking why she's here. Then unexpectedly, he hears Mei's voice asking back why he's here. For a brief moment, it appears as though the doll itself is talking to him. But then, from the shadows, the real Mei shows herself. She wonders if the doll frightened him. He quickly denies it, though his nervousness is obvious. Mei proceeds to show him her favorite dolls. Then out of the blue, she takes off her eye patch. revealing a bright green doll's eye. According to her, it can see things that she shouldn't see, which is why she keeps it covered all the time. Sensing that Kouichi starts to feel uncomfortable, she takes Kouichi upstairs. She reveals that all the dolls here are made by an artist known as Kirika. Nervously, Kouichi brings up their encounter in the hospital elevator. He asks if she had taken a doll from this gallery for the girl who died that day. Considering Sanai's revelation that the deceased girl might have been named Misaki, he wonders if she was Misaki Mei's sister, but Mei shakes her head. Then again, after thinking about it, Kouichi remembers that the dead girl was an only child, according to Sanai. Once again, Mei warns Kouichi to stay away from her, but after seeing his genuine confusion, she finally decides to explain the curse that has plagued Class 3-3 for the past 26 years, beginning with the death of a student named Misaki. Mei mentions how Misaki appeared in the graduation photo, deathly pale, yet still smiling. She claims that the legend didn't just end with their graduation. However, just as Mei is about to continue telling the story, Kouichi's phone rings. It's his grandmother, worried about his whereabouts. At the same time, Amane announces that the gallery is closing. Kouichi has no choice but to leave without knowing the continuation of the legend. A few days later, as they prepare to go home, Kouichi asks Yukari about the field trips. Yukari mentions they went to Tokyo last year. This piques Kouichi's curiosity. He always thought field trips were reserved for third-year students. Sakuragi explains that they used to do it in the third year, but the schedule was changed some time ago. Then, as Kouichi is about to change his shoes, he casually asks Yukari what kind of person Misaki Mei is. Sakuragi freezes. A visible shiver runs through her as she turns back to face him, her expression darkening. Trembling, she sternly warns Kouichi not to say that name. Before Kouichi can ask for an explanation, Naoya suddenly passes by, interrupting him. Kouichi then asks Naoya if he knows about the legend from 26 years ago. Without even turning back, Naoya scoffs, mocking Kouichi for believing in such stories. But despite his dismissive tone, he still asks Kouichi how much he actually knows. After Kouichi repeats what he's heard from Mei, Yukari cryptically says that what he knows is only from the first year. Suddenly, Ms. Mikami approaches, asking them what's going on. When she hears that Kouichi knows about the first year, she simply tells them it's best to stay quiet about it. At night, Kouichi tries to ask Reiko about the story from 26 years ago. He's sure Reiko knows about what happened beyond Misaki's graduation, but Reiko skillfully evades the topic. Instead, she tells him that there will be a right time for him to learn the truth. She also reveals that Kouichi's mother, Ritsuko, was in class 3-3 as well. Sometime later, while walking with Tomohiko, Kouichi catches sight of Mei on the rooftop again. Without hesitation, he takes off toward her, leaving Tomohiko. Upon reaching the rooftop, he gets a call from Naoya. He slips in a cryptic warning, don't get involved with something that doesn't exist. A chill runs down Kouichi's spine when he hears that. When he asks what Naoya means, Naoya simply says that he'll reveal everything about the legend next month. At night, Kouichi and Sanie talk over the phone. Sanie has confirmed that the dead girl's name was Misaki, not Masaki, and Misaki wasn't her family name. It was her given name. Her full name was Fujioka Misaki. On May 26th, Class 3-3 holds a test. Kouichi is among the first students to finish. As he steps out into the corridor, he freezes. Mei is already there, standing as if she's been waiting for him. The two then talk by the window. Once again, Kouichi tries to bring up Fujioka Misaki. That's when Mei reveals that Fujioka Misaki, the dead girl, was actually her cousin. They were incredibly close. After getting the answer he was seeking, Kouichi confesses that he has a question that's been haunting him since he started school. But Mei is one step ahead. She knows Kouichi is going to ask, why does everyone act like she doesn't exist? Kouichi's breath catches. He remembers Naoya's warning, don't get involved with people who don't exist. His chest tightens. And then Mei speaks again. Her next revelation even more chilling. Nobody can see her. She looks straight into his eyes and asks, what if you're the only one who can see me? Kouichi's heart pounds. Suddenly, a teacher bursts into the classroom, urgently calling for Yukari. A few moments later, as if in a panic, grabs her umbrella. Just as she's about to reach the nearest staircase, she sees Kouichi and Mei. She stops dead in her tracks, as though she's just seen a ghost. Then, without a word, she abruptly turns around and takes the stairs. But in her haste, she misses a step and loses her balance. Her body slamming against each step, her umbrella escapes from her grasp. Within a split second, her throat drives straight into the sharp tip of the umbrella. Blood instantly pools around her. A faint, wet, gurgling voice escapes her mouth. She twitches, struggling to stay alive. Kouichi and the teacher immediately rush to check on her, but unfortunately, by the time they reach her, her body has already gone still. Apparently, just before this incident, Yukari's mother died in an accident. The two deaths send chills through the school, and soon, the rumors begin. People question if the curse has awakened once more this year. They say that once the curse returns, at least one person connected with Class 3-3 will die each month. It can be a Class 3-3 student themselves or their family members. A few days later, on June 2nd, Kouichi is finally discharged from the hospital after being admitted again. He meets Sanae, who reveals that her brother, Takeru, is Kouichi's classmate, so she knows about the fact that Kouichi witnessed the accident. After the checkup, Sanae takes Kouichi out for lunch. Over their meal, she reveals that Takeru had mentioned that there was something strange about his class. He didn't want to go into detail about it, but he didn't believe Yukari's death was simply an accident. Kouichi asks if she's ever heard about Misaki Mei from Takeru. Mizuno says no. After all, she and Takeru aren't exactly close. But after Kouichi tells her about Mei and the legend from 26 years ago, Sanae agrees to ask Takeru about Mei. On Kouichi's way home, he runs into his classmate Iyono Iya. As they chat casually, a sudden, violent gust of wind sweeps through the street, moving the large glass panel beside them. Acting on instinct, Kouichi pushes Aya aside just in time. Aya shrieks, her face pale with terror. "I don't want to die!" she screams. Later, Kouichi visits M's studio. He heads straight downstairs to see the eerie doll that resembles Mei. To his surprise, Mei is also there, again, as if waiting for him. Curious about the aftermath of Yukari's death, Kouichi asks her what happened at school while he was hospitalized. Mei replies that everyone was frightened. She believes that the curse has undeniably returned, yet she insists that Kouichi doesn't need to know what's actually going on. In Class 3-3. At night, Kouichi turns to Reiko once more, hoping to uncover more about the curse. He learns that she too was in Class 3-3 15 years ago. However, Reiko claims that she remembers little about it. Instead, all she does is tell him to follow the class rules. The next morning, the air in Class 3-3 is heavy with murmurs about the curse. Izumi's best friend, Sugiura Takako, wonders if it happened because Kouichi broke the rules. Another student, Nakao Junta, can't comprehend why Kouichi was placed in their class to begin with. Meanwhile, Izumi blames herself for not warning Kouichi sooner. But what matters for them now is to find out what to do and how to explain everything to Kouichi. Suddenly, in the midst of the conversation, Kouichi steps into the classroom. Every head turns toward him in an instant. They stare at him for a moment before going back to their own seats in silence. During lunch, the distance between Kouichi and the rest of the class becomes painfully clear. No one dares to speak to him. It's as if he's an outcast. But then, Naoya calls him. He wants Kouichi to meet him outside with Izumi. When they meet, Kouichi immediately confronts Naoya about his promise to explain everything. But before Naoya can speak, Izumi steps in and says that the situation has changed. So it's better for Kouichi to act as if Naoya never made that promise. Kouichi has no choice but to obey. However, he still wants to know what Naoya meant by something that doesn't exist. Before he can get his answer, Kouichi's phone suddenly gets a call from Sanae. She wants to make sure Mei really exists, because when she asked Takeru about Mei last night, he insisted that no such person exists in his class. Kouichi is speechless. He tries to convince Sunny that Mei is real. Sanae herself is entering the elevator as they speak, so the signal is weak and her voice fades in and out on Kouichi's end. But there's something else she doesn't realize. Something a lot worse than a weak signal. The elevator has just malfunctioned. The cables above snap, sending the elevator plummeting from the highest floor. All Kouichi hears over the phone is deafening static as the elevator hits the ground, ending Sanae's life. A few moments later, Kouichi arrives at the hospital to check the scene. The next day, Mizuno Takeru is absent from class, so Mr. Kubodira solemnly announces what happened to his sister. Later, during the break, Kouichi approaches Mei to talk about Takeru's death. This action makes him get sharp, wary stares from his classmates. After that, Kouichi goes to the library to check the yearbook from 1972, hoping to find Misaki's name somewhere in its pages. Deep down, he knows that it wouldn't be that easy, but still, something manages to catch his eye. He finds a familiar face in the graduation picture, his mother. Suddenly, Mr. Chibiki approaches him, curious about what he's looking at. Kouichi tells him about his mother and her death 15 years ago. Hearing that, Mr. Chibiki ponders for a moment, as if something clicks in for him. Suddenly, Izumi appears to tell Kouichi that he's been called to the teacher's room. Strangely, she apologizes to him, saying that it's for the class's sake. She then walks away. Apparently, some investigators called Kouichi to question him regarding Mizuno's death because they found out she was calling him when the elevator malfunctioned. The investigators themselves have ruled out the case as a pure accident, but they're still figuring out what caused it. When Kouichi goes back to the classroom, he's perplexed to see it completely empty. The class shouldn't be over yet, but not a single soul is there. Then, from the hallway, Mr. Kubodera appears. Without explanation, he dismisses Kouichi for the day. No reason, no elaboration, he just reminds Kouichi to always obey the class rules. Later, Kouichi invites Yuya and Ikuo to walk home together. Although the two look hesitant, they don't refuse. As they walk, Kouichi asks them about what happened during the 6th period, when the class was empty. According to Yuya, they went to the meeting room to take care of some stuff. However, he can't tell Kouichi the details. All he can say is that Kouichi will experience unpleasant stuff from now on. It's just one of those class rules, for the sake of the class. Ikuo, on the other hand, feels that it's too unfair after all. The truth is, he doesn't like the way Izumi handles things. Therefore, he decides to tell Kouichi everything. Kouichi's first question is the one that has haunted him since the beginning. Does Misaki Mei really exist? Ikuo is about to respond, but things begin to go horribly wrong. A sharp, sudden pain seizes his chest. His whole body convulses. His breathing is shallow and erratic. The following day, it is announced that Ikuo is dead. The atmosphere in Class 3-3 is even more unsettling than before. Kouichi is no longer just avoided. He is completely ignored. Whenever he speaks, no one responds. When he walks away in the middle of a lesson, not even the teacher acknowledges his absence. It doesn't feel like he's an outcast anymore. It feels like he doesn't exist. After school, he discovers 2 slips of paper tucked inside his desk. Whatever is written on them compels him to visit M's studio. Once again, he finds Mei there. Upon meeting her, Kouichi hands her one of the notes. It's from Yuya, and it reads, "Sorry, please ask Misaki for an explanation." The second paper is a list of Class 3-3 students with Misaki Mei's name crossed out. Since Mei was absent today, Kouichi fills her in on Ikuo's sudden death and the strange way their classmates have been acting toward him. As their conversation continues, another realization dawns on him. M's studio isn't just a shop, it's Mei's home, and Kirika is her mother. Mei then leads Kouichi to the upper floor, her living space. They sit down and finally have a proper talk. Kouichi gives his first question. Is the Mei in front of him real? Without hesitation, Mei assures him that she's a real, living human, not a ghost. However, since May 1st, Class 3-3 has been treating her as if she doesn't exist. Ideally, Kouichi should have done the same, but since no one told him about it, he unknowingly interacted with her. As a result, he too was cast into non-existence. This whole thing began in the year following Misaki's graduation. The curse would awaken whenever there was one additional class member. The problem is, no one was able to identify who that extra person was. The only sign of their presence was an inexplicable shortage of seats. Attempts to verify the extra students have always led to dead ends. Every student matched the records perfectly, with no obvious intruders. But then, they discovered something horrible. Their memories had been altered. Faces, names, even entire histories had been rewritten to accommodate the extra person. It sounds impossible, but it's the terrifying reality of Class 3-3. More importantly, each additional student was a dead person. These dead people weren't like ghosts. They walked, breathed, and remembered their lives as if they had never left the world. Apparently, they were the previous victims of Class 3-3's curse. This whole phenomenon is the reason Class 3-3 has been doing countermeasures to avoid death. Back then, they tried things like moving the classroom to a different location, renaming it as Class C, and more. However, nothing worked. Then, 10 years ago, they stumbled upon a harsh yet effective solution. It was to ignore one student in exchange for the dead person. That way, they could act like the number of class members was back as it was. With that, the deaths stopped. This practice has continued since that year, and this year, the non-existent person happens to be Mei. Mei herself is certain that she's not the extra dead person. When Kouichi asks how she knows for sure, Kirika suddenly steps out of her studio. She greets Kouichi in a warm voice, but her demeanor remains indifferent. Before Kouichi can say anything else, Mei abruptly tells him he should head home soon. She stands and offers to walk him back. As they walk, Kouichi can't help but wonder why Mei and her mother were so cold to each other. Mei explains that she's just a doll to her mother. Something not real. Kirika doesn't even care that she often skips school. Kouichi then asks how Mei is okay with being treated as non-existent by her classmates. Mei thinks that if it wasn't her, there would be someone else she has to treat as non-existent, and that would make her feel even worse. So, in a way, it's better this way. Their classmates likely believe the charm was broken because Kouichi interacted with Mei, which is why they started ignoring him too. By pretending two people don't exist, they might think they're reinforcing the countermeasure. Suddenly, Mei stops walking and shows Kouichi her left eye again. She reveals that she lost her real eye when she was 4 due to a severe tumor. Her mother insisted that using a regular prosthetic eye wouldn't look good, so she made her a special doll eye. Before they part ways, Mei shakes Kouichi's hand, celebrating that they're going to be non-existent together from now on. At night, Kouichi receives a call from his father, who checks in on him and asks how it feels to return to Yomiyama after a year and a half. The question catches Kouichi off guard. He doesn't remember ever visiting the town within the past 2 years before moving. His father sounds equally confused. In the end, his father dismisses it as a mistake and ends the call. Since then, Kouichi and Mei start spending more time with each other. They would have lunch on the rooftop, chat during PE, and walk home together. One day, Kouichi shows Mei his mother's 1972 yearbook in the library. Just then, Kouichi discovers that his mother's homeroom teacher was Mr. Chibiki. As if summoned by their conversation, Mr. Chibiki suddenly appears. Now that Kouichi already knows about the curse, Mr. Chibiki can talk about it more freely. Kouichi himself wonders if it's okay for Mr. Chibiki to interact with them. But according to Mr. Chibiki, he doesn't have any connection to Class 3-3 now, so he should be fine. Apparently, the curse only applies to the class's students, their siblings, parents, and grandparents who are in Yomiyama. As long as they're outside Yomiyama, they shouldn't worry about being affected by the curse. Homeroom and vice-homeroom teachers can also be victims. Mr. Chibiki then reveals that Misaki from the original story was a boy. His family name was Yomiyama, just like the town. One night, his house caught fire, killing him along with his entire family. Mr. Chibiki proceeds to show them records of Class 3-3 student lists from 1972 to the present. At the bottom of each list, the name of that year's dead person is recorded. Kouichi notices that in 1996, only 7 people died. According to Mr. Chibiki, for the first half of the year, the plan to ignore one student had worked. However, midway through the school year, the non-existent student couldn't bear the isolation any longer and broke the rule. That moment triggered the curse. That year's dead person was Asakura Mami. She was originally from the class of 1993. However, throughout 1996, her name mysteriously vanished from the 1993 records, and no one remembered she had ever been a part of that class. And then, after the class of 1996 graduated, Asakura's name magically reappeared in the records of 1993. Even the plan to ignore one person sometimes failed. In some cases, the reasons remain unknown. Furthermore, this curse almost never stopped once it had started. Before leaving the library, Kouichi asks Mr. Chibiki one last question. Did the curse awaken in 1983, 15 years ago? It was the year his aunt Reiko was in class 3-3. Mr. Chibiki confirms that it did. With that, the pieces finally fall into place. Kouichi realizes the truth. His mother had been one of the curse's victims. At night, Kouichi, his grandparents, and Reiko sit together for a serious talk. Reiko apologizes to Kouichi for not being able to help. Even now, she's still not sure whether Ritsuko's death was caused by the curse. She had thought the curse had already stopped in the middle of the year. Kouichi asks how it stopped, but Reiko struggles to recall. All she remembers is that something happened during the summer break. Sometime later, on July 13th, Mr. Kubadera walks into the classroom. He places his bag on his desk and apologizes, claiming that he's done everything to ensure that they would all make it through the year. As he rummages through his bag, his words become scattered. He mutters about uncertainty, about how no one can say for sure if their efforts will be enough. Then suddenly, his voice turns into a scream and he pulls out a knife. He points the knife toward his neck. For a moment, he struggles. It's as if an unseen force is fighting to stop him from going through with it. But in the end, the struggle ends. He stabs his own throat with the knife. As if it's not enough, he forces the blade in deeper before pulling it out. Blood splatters everywhere. The students remain frozen, unable to process what they've just witnessed. But it doesn't take long for the room to erupt into chaos. Screams echo through the halls as panic spreads like wildfire. In the midst of the hysteria, Mr. Chibiki and Ms. Mikami rush to deal with the situation. Apparently, Mr. Chibiki had sensed something was wrong. Earlier that morning, he walked to school with Mr. Kubadera and noticed the desperation in Mr. Kubadera's voice. Now that they know ignoring two students didn't work, Naoya begins speaking to Kouichi and even Mei again. The three of them gather on the rooftop, chatting casually, when Izumi suddenly appears to join in the conversation. Mei thinks that by now, some students have likely left the city. It's common for members of Class 3-3 to go elsewhere during summer break in an attempt to escape the curse. Later, Kouichi and Mei visit the library in search of answers, specifically about the time the curse mysteriously stopped 15 years ago. Mr. Chibiki pulls out the student list from that year, revealing that the deaths came to an abrupt halt on August 9th. Interestingly, the class had gone on a trip starting on August 8th. This suggests something must have happened during that trip. What's even stranger is that no one from that year remembers who the dead person was. Mr. Chibiki himself doesn't know exactly what occurred, but he does know that the class visited an old shrine on Yomiyama Mountain. People suspected the shrine might have played a role, so they attempted to visit it again once the curse returned, but nothing came of it. Even so, Mr. Chibiki believes the shrine could still hold important clues. Later, on July 17th, Ms. Mikami announces that the class will go on a trip from August 8th to August 10th. One night, Kouichi has a nightmare about being a dead person. He jolts awake in sweat when he gets a call from his father. Seizing the moment, Kouichi asks about his mother's graduation photo, the one with Yomiyama Misaki allegedly in it. But his father explains that Ritsuko kept it at her parents' house because she didn't like looking at it. Later that day, Naoya invites Kouichi to meet at a restaurant called Inoya. Kouichi agrees, but when he arrives, only Izumi is there. Looking mildly annoyed, she says she only came because Naoya told her it was an important class matter. Apparently, Naoya had filled her in about what happened 15 years ago and mentioned Kouichi's mother as well. A few moments later, the waitress approaches them. She turns out to be Yuya's older sister, Mochizuki Tomoka. After their order arrives, Kouichi confesses that he has started wondering if he's the dead person. Izumi meets his gaze and presents him with possibilities. What if he had never been born? What if his mother died before even giving birth to him? And now he's revived as a transfer student. The thought leaves Kouichi genuinely shocked, but then Izumi starts giggling. It turns out that she was just joking. She reaches out her hand and asks Kouichi to shake it again. She's certain that she's held his hand before, but she still can't remember when or where. Finally, Naoya and Yuya arrive. Izumi quickly slides into the seat beside Kouichi. Then the four of them, now joined by Tomoka, start discussing the curse. Yuya reveals that he's told Tomoka everything. Tomoka then recounts an encounter with a customer named Matsunaga Katsumi, an alumnus of Yomiyama North's class 3-3. Curious, she asked him about the curse. His response was unsettling. He grew agitated and started rambling hysterically. He kept insisting that the curse that year wasn't his fault, that he had saved everyone, that he had left something behind but could no longer remember what or where. From the look of it, Katsumi was the one who managed to stop the curse 15 years ago. Therefore, Naoya believes they need to track him down and speak to him directly. Knowing that Kouichi's aunt was in the same class as Katsumi, Izumi comes up with an idea. Later that day, Kouichi visits Mei's house and tells her about the meeting. He invites her to go with him once he knows Katsumi's whereabouts, but she declines, explaining that she will be leaving on a trip with her parents starting tomorrow. However, she'll be back before the school trip. Before they part ways, she asks Kouichi to show her the photo with Misaki in it, once he finds it in his grandparents' house. Mei proceeds to ask Kouichi if his suspicion about being a dead person has gone. She then runs to the other room, takes off her eye patch, stares deep into his eyes, and tells him that the dead person is not him. Later, Kouichi consults Reiko about Katsumi. Reiko remembers him, but she has no recollection of him stopping the curse. Still, she agrees to help by reaching out to him. A few days later, Kouichi, Reiko, Naoya, Yuya, Izumi, Takako, and Junta set out to visit Katsumi. Based on Reiko's findings, he now lives and works at a resort outside Yomiyama. The tension in the car is palpable. No one speaks as a massive truck roars past them. Reiko grips the wheel tightly, driving with extreme caution. Only when they finally cross the town's border does the group let out a collective sigh of relief. Reiko then accelerates, weaving through lanes with confidence. Outside Yomiyama, fear seems to no longer hold her back. Upon arriving at the resort, they learn that Katsumi is attending a reception. With time to spare, they decide to relax at the beach. They change into their swimsuits and play around in the sand and water. Amid the lively scene, Kouichi's eyes land on a familiar figure. She's no other than Mei. He approaches her, and before long, she seamlessly blends into the group. As she focuses on building a sandcastle, Kouichi asks about her family. Mei explains that their family owns a villa nearby. Since her father rarely visits Japan, these occasional trips are their way of spending time together. Yet, despite these moments, she doesn't feel a connection between her and her family. During lunchtime, Naoya suggests having a barbecue using the tools he brought from home. To make it more exciting, he proposes a fishing challenge to gather ingredients. He teams up with Izumi and Takako, while Kouichi is paired with Mei and Yuya. With that, the game begins. Everyone takes the challenge seriously, but in the end, they only manage to catch a flounder, an octopus, a starfish, a sea cucumber, a hermit crab, and kelp. With no clear winner, they declare the game a tie. Fortunately, Reiko had been out buying meat and vegetables while they were fishing. Thanks to her, everyone has a satisfying meal. After lunch, the students continue playing while Reiko watches over them. Suddenly, Katsumi appears and greets Reiko. As they engage in small talk, Katsumi mentions a strange feeling. He's certain he saw Reiko recently, and he's sure it was her. Reiko, however, dismisses it, insisting they haven't met for a long time. The conversation shifts to the curse just as Kouichi, Izumi, and Mei join them. They introduce themselves to Katsumi and ask if he remembers how he stopped the curse. Katsumi admits that he still can't recall the exact details. What he does remember is that someone died in the mountains, there was an incident, and the shrine had been in ruins. Kouichi then asks Katsumi if he really left something behind as a clue. Katsumi is certain that he did, but he can't remember what it was. He only recalls the need to let others know as quickly as possible. He's also sure that the object wasn't a piece of paper. After a moment of deep thought, a sudden realization strikes him. The item he left behind was in the school. However, before he can specify where exactly, a strong gust of wind suddenly sweeps through. The wind sends the ball that the others had been playing with soaring into the sea. Junta volunteers to retrieve it and immediately swims out. But even after covering a considerable distance, he still hasn't reached it. The group watches anxiously from the shore. Their worry turns into panic when Junta suddenly disappears from their sight. Naoya prepares to swim after him. Just then, Nakao resurfaces, revealing that he was only joking. However, instead of returning, he keeps swimming farther and farther away. Moments later, he stops and simply floats in place. Without hesitation, Naoya, Kouichi, and Katsumi dive into the water to save him. Unbeknownst to them, a motorboat is speeding directly toward Junta. In the blink of an eye, the sea turns red, sending his body flying before it lands motionless on the water's surface. The others are frozen in horror at the gruesome sight. Katsumi mumbles from behind Kouichi. He remembers now. The item he left behind was in the classroom. Sometime later, on the way home from Nakao's funeral, Mr. Chibiki and Ms. Mikami walk alongside Kouichi and Mei. Mr. Chibiki wonders about Junta's condition that day. Kouichi recalls that Junta had been carsick and kept throwing up. Mei adds that he also struggled to swim properly. Mr. Chibiki suddenly stops in his tracks. He reveals that he had consulted a local detective regarding Junta's death. According to the detective's findings, Junta might have already been dead before the boat hit him. The autopsy revealed a severe concussion and a head wound that appeared to have been sustained prior to the accident. Junta's family also mentioned hearing a loud thump from the stairs that morning. When they checked, they saw Junta rushing out the door. It's likely that he had hit his head during that moment. This information confirms that the event leading to Junta's death actually occurred in Yomiyama. The curse never extended beyond the town. Sometime later, Kouichi meets with Naoya and Yuya again. He shares what he learned from Katsumi, that the clue he left behind was in class 3-3. Yuya speculates that Katsumi must have meant the class 3-3 in the old school building. Kouichi, still burdened with guilt over Nakao's death, asks them to keep this information to themselves. The three agree to meet at school the next day at 3 p.m. when most club activities should be over. Yuya, a member of the art club, has a key to the art room, so they decide to use it as their meeting spot. The following day, as Naoyu and Kouichi arrive at the school, they run into Aya and her friend, Ogura Yumi. They were there to meet Mr. Chibiki, who, surprisingly, is the drama club's advisor. When she questions Naoya and Kouichi about their presence, they initially lie, pretending they're just meeting Yuya. However, Aya quickly grows suspicious, forcing them to reveal that they're searching for a clue to break the curse. After the two girls leave, Naoya and Kouichi head to the art room, only to find Mei casually painting. Moments later, Yuya arrives. With no other choice, they come clean and explain to Mei what they're doing. The next thing we know, Mei joins them in their search. They enter the dusty, abandoned Class 3-3 in the old school building, which is now used as a storage room. Wasting no time, they begin rummaging through the cluttered space. After a long search, Mei suddenly points toward a locker as if guided by instinct. Kouichi opens it. He initially finds nothing but cleaning supplies. But then, he notices something taped to the top of the locker. After peeling off the tape, he retrieves a small package wrapped in paper. Written on it is, "For the future students suffering from this curse." They find a tape inside. Without hesitation, they rush to the broadcasting room to play it. The tape begins playing, revealing a recording of Katsumi's voice. He introduces himself before explaining the purpose of the recording. First, he wishes to confess his sin. Second, he wants to leave behind advice on how to stop the curse. He then recounts the events of the school trip 15 years ago. The class had departed on August 8th for a 2-night stay. Their homeroom teacher suggested visiting a local shrine in hopes of dispelling the curse. On the second day, they made their way there. The shrine was in a terrible state. It was dilapidated and long abandoned. Hoping to improve their chances of breaking the curse, they decided to clean it up. However, their efforts were in vain. As soon as they left, heavy rain started pouring, accompanied by fierce lightning. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck one boy, killing him instantly and throwing the group into chaos. In the ensuing panic, everyone rushed down the mountain. One girl slipped and fell from a cliff. Then, as soon as they reached the base of the mountain, something happened. Something Katsumi deems the most crucial part of the story. But just as he is about to reveal it, the tape suddenly stops playing. A tense silence fills the room before the sound of approaching footsteps breaks through. They manage to quickly hide and escape from the patrolling teacher. However, due to their haste, the tape string gets tangled into a mess. Luckily for them, Yuya claims that he can fix it. Therefore, they entrust the tape to him for repairs. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to them, two tragedies unfold elsewhere in town. A construction truck's faulty brakes send it crashing into Yumi's house and claim the life of her brother. At the same time, Aya and her family attempt to flee Yomiyama, only for their car to slip off a cliff, plunging them into their death. Finally, the day of the trip arrives. The students, along with Ms. Mikami and Mr. Chibiki, gather in front of an old, grand hotel, where they'll stay for the next 3 days. The atmosphere is so tense. A sense of unease hangs over everyone, as if they don't want to be part of this but have no choice but to go through with it. Upon entering the hotel, they're greeted by the two hotel managers, an old couple. Later on, Kouichi, Naoya, Yuya and Mei gather in a room to listen to the repaired tape. Finally, Katsumi's story continues. Katsumi recounts how, after reaching the base of the mountain, he got into a brutal fight with one of his classmates. In the heat of the moment, they exchanged fierce blows until suddenly the other student stopped moving. Apparently, a tree branch had pierced his classmate, killing him instantly. Overcome with panic, Katsumi fled to the hotel. The police arrived to investigate the students who were struck by lightning and fell off the cliff, but Katsumi remained silent about the classmate he had just killed. That night, Katsumi couldn't sleep as he kept thinking of what he had done. Yet, until the next day, nobody had discovered the body of that student. Curious, Katsumi returned to the mountain to check it, only to find that the body had vanished without a trace. Confused, he questioned his classmates about the missing student, but to his horror, they looked at him as if he had lost his mind. They insisted that no such person had ever existed. According to them, only 19 students had gone on the trip, not 20. And then, it finally clicked for him. The student he had killed must have been the dead person. 2 weeks passed and Katsumi remained the only one who still remembered the vanished student. But he knew it wouldn't last. The memories would soon slip away, just as they had for everyone else. he recorded this message. Before ending the tape, Katsumi left behind a chilling revelation. The only way to stop the curse is to return the dead to death. In other words, kill the extra person. Now that Kouichi, Naoya, Yuya, and Mei know how to break the curse, all they need to do is find the dead person among their classmates. However, the task seems nearly impossible. Even in Katsumi's case, the truth only came to light by sheer coincidence. Kouichi also questions if they could really bring themselves to kill a classmate. During dinner, the four of them sit together. They're quietly discussing ways to identify the dead person when suddenly, Izumi stands up. She apologizes for failing as the head of countermeasures. However, her words quickly shift into an accusation as she turns to Mei, blaming her for everything that has happened. In her eyes, if Mei had properly followed her role of the non-existent person and avoided interacting with Kouichi, none of the deaths would have occurred. She demands an apology, believing Mei to be responsible for the tragedy unfolding around them. At first, Mei refuses as she sees no reason to apologize, but then she proceeds to lower her head and offers a quiet apology. The boys at her table grow visibly frustrated. They believe that Mei has done nothing wrong and that the blame is misplaced. Before the tension in the room can escalate further, an abrupt commotion shifts everyone's attention. Their classmate Wakui has an asthma attack. With his inhaler empty, the phone lines down, and no service to call the ambulance. Mr. Chibiki makes the decision to drive Wakui to the hospital himself. Later that evening, Mei expresses her gratitude to Kouichi for standing up for her during dinner. She also invites him to visit her room. Once inside, Kouichi takes out a graduation photo of his mother. Mei removes her eye patch and carefully examines the picture. With just one look, she's able to identify Yomiyama Misaki, noting that he appears blurrier than the others. This discovery leads her to finally reveal the full truth about her past, starting with her mother. Her mother's real name is Yukio, and she has a twin sister named Mitsuyo. After the two had started their own families, Mitsuyo gave birth to twin daughters. One of those daughters was Fujioka Misaki, Mei's relative, who had died in the hospital. A year after Mitsuyo's twins were born, Yukio also gave birth to a child. However, that child did not survive. As a result, Yukio went through a deep depression. At the same time, the Fujioka family was struggling with financial difficulties. In an effort to help both families, a decision was made. Mitsuyo and her husband agreed to give one of their twin daughters to Yukio. That child turned out to be Misaki Mei. In other words, Fujioka Misaki and Misaki Mei were twin sisters. Misaki herself remained unaware of this truth until she was in the 5th grade when her grandmother accidentally blurted it out. After learning the truth, Mei asked Kirika for permission to meet her biological mother, but in sadness and anger, Kirika refused to allow it. Despite this, Mei still secretly met and formed a bond with her twin sister Misaki. Over time, the two became close. Misaki had developed a fascination with the dolls in Mei's house and had once wished to have one for her birthday. However, before that wish could come true, tragedy struck. Just as they entered their 3rd year of middle school, Misaki unexpectedly passed away. This explains why Mei was delivering a doll to the morgue when she and Kouichi first met. While everyone believes that the curse returned in May with Yukari's death, the truth is, it returned in April, and its very first victim was Fujioka Misaki. Mei proceeds to reveal that her left eye has the ability to see the color of death. According to her, both the dead and those close to death emit a distinct hue that sets them apart. This is how she knows for certain that Kouichi is not the extra student. It's also the reason she wanted to see Kouichi's mother's graduation photo to identify Yomiyama Misaki. Kouichi then wonders if this means Mei already knows who the dead person in class 3-3 is. She nods. Though she has spent most of her time in class wearing an eye patch, her curiosity eventually got the better of her. Now, she knows the identity of the extra student and can confirm that they are present in the hotel at this very moment. However, before she can reveal the name, the door suddenly swings open and Naoya bursts in, his face pale with terror. Meanwhile, Izumi is gossiping about Mei with Takako in their room. She recalls that when she was in elementary school, there had been another girl who looked exactly like her, and her name had also been Misaki. When Takako asks if that girl had also worn an eye patch, Izumi immediately realizes that Mei had lost her eye when she was 4. Back in Mei's room, Naoya frantically asks Kouichi and Mei if they remember Tomohiko. Confused, the two immediately confirm that they do. Upon hearing their response, Naoya falls to his knees in despair. Apparently, he was convinced that Tomohiko was the dead person, as he claimed to have forgotten details from his childhood. Driven by suspicion, Naoya confronted Tomohiko directly, demanding to know if he was the dead person. The accusation only enraged Tomohiko. Things escalated into a physical fight on the balcony. In the heat of the moment, before Naoya even realized what had happened, Tomohiko was already on the ground below, blood pooling beneath his head. Naoya then rushed to Kouichi and Mei, hoping for validation. Kouichi is horrified by what Naoya has done. Still, he pushes aside his shock and tries to calm Naoya. They rush to check on him. As Kouichi, Naoya and Mei make their way toward the main door, Kouichi is struck by an unsettling feeling about the dining hall. Just as he's about to open the dining hall door, a bloody hand suddenly grabs his leg. It's his classmate Meijima. Weakly, Meijima mutters something about the dining hall and the hotel managers before his strength gives out. Kouichi decides to push the door open, only to be met with a horrifying sight. The dining hall is engulfed in flames. At the center of the chaos, the male hotel manager is pinned to the wall. Kouichi immediately slams the door shut, then rushes to help Majima. Just then, Izumi appears, curious about what's going on. After Kouichi explains what he saw, Takako's scream suddenly pierces the air. Without hesitation, Kouichi, Mei, and Izumi race toward the sound. When they reach Takako and Izumi's room, they find the door and bed already drenched in blood. Suddenly, Yuya appears. He explains that Tomohiko had barged into his room earlier, covered in mud and seething with rage. When Yuya asked what happened, Tomohiko's response was to pull out a knife. In a desperate attempt to calm him, Yuya told him about the tape. Following this revelation, Yuya leads Kouichi to his room, only to discover that the tape recorder is missing. At that moment, Naoya returns, having entrusted Maijima's care to another person. Kouichi quickly instructs Naoya and Yuya to search for Tomohiko and warn everyone to escape. As the chaos escalates, Yuya suggests they inform Ms. Mikami. However, when they reach her room, she is nowhere to be found. Instead, a fresh trail of blood stains the floor, leading down the hallway. Following it cautiously, they arrive at another room only to come face to face with the crazy female hotel manager with a bloodied cleaver in her hand. Naoya and Yuya scream. Their voices immediately catch the attention of Kouichi, Mei, and Izumi. The three quickly move to check on their friends, but just as they take a step forward, Takako emerges from the shadows, blocking their path. A twisted smile spreads across her face as she locks eyes with Mei. Then she pulls out a knife and, in a frenzy, shrieks the phrase, "Return the dead to death." Thankfully, Kouichi reacts swiftly, managing to stop Takako before she can strike. With her failed attempt, Takako walks away. Kouichi questions how she knows about the phrase. In answer to this, Izumi explains that Yumi, the girl Kouichi and Naoya encountered at school while searching for the recording, had told her about Katsumi's item. Therefore, as the head of countermeasures, Izumi had asked Yuya to let her and Takako listen to the tape. Feeling guilty, Izumi rushes after Takako. But suddenly, the hotel's broadcast system turns on. The speakers blare with Takako's voice, announcing that she has a message from the head of countermeasures. Then, the tape begins to play, revealing the truth for all to hear. As the tape reaches its end, Takako declares that this year's dead person is Mei. The effect is immediate. One by one, the students emerge from their rooms, each holding a weapon. As if possessed, they begin chanting in unison. Ms. Mikami attempts to quell the madness. She throws herself in front of Mei to protect her, only to be stabbed in the struggle. Her body collapses to the floor, blood pooling beneath her. Kouichi then takes Mei to run. Wherever they go, there are students waiting to kill her. Just as they feel safe after hiding in a room, the students catch up to them, forcing them to escape through the window. But even after doing so, Yumi still finds them. However, just as she lunges, her foot slips, and she falls headfirst to the ground with a sickening impact. Meanwhile, another student gets curious about the fire in the dining hall and recklessly opens the door. In an instant, a violent explosion erupts, consuming him in flames. Hearing the explosion, Kouichi and Mei suspect Takako is behind it. Takako herself steps into view, denying any involvement. She immediately lunges at Kouichi before turning her blade on Mei, but as she moves to strike, a stray cable wraps around her neck. The more she moves, the tighter it constricts. Her frantic struggle lasts only moments before her body goes still. Not long after, Izumi arrives, only to be met with the lifeless form of her best friend. Overcome with rage and grief, she explodes at Mei, once again blaming her for everything. With no other choice, Mei flees up the stairs. The hotel is in complete chaos. Flames engulf the building. People die here and there. Naoya and Yuya, barely escaping the grasp of the deranged hotel manager, find themselves caught by her. Just as she raises her knife to strike Naoya, Mr. Chibiki appears to deal with her. He then brings Naoya and Yuya to the car and orders them to stay put. Inside the burning hotel, Kouichi finds himself approached by a girl begging for help, but before he can react, a blade pierces her back. The attacker turns out to be Tomohiko. His eyes are cold as he fixes his gaze on Kouichi, convinced that Kouichi is the dead person. In his mind, Kouichi's arrival in Mei is undeniable proof. Without warning, Tomohiko lunges at Kouichi with a knife. Kouichi desperately tries to explain that the curse actually began in April, but Tomohiko refuses to listen. The fight intensifies until Tomohiko overpowers Kouichi, but just as his blade is about to strike again, a sudden blow lands on his head. Izumi stands behind him, ready to finish him off, but before she can land another hit, Mr. Chibiki intervenes. Unable to do anything, Izumi flees the scene. A short while later, Mr. Chibiki reunites with Naoya and the others, carrying Tomohiko, who is badly injured. Kouichi then rushes back into the crumbling building. He finally reaches the top floor, where he finds Mei standing face to face with Izumi. Clutching a sharp tool, Izumi advances toward her. Kouichi tries to stop Izumi, who still believes that Mei is the dead person. She insists that killing Mei is the only way to end the tragedy. Shoving Kouichi aside, she grabs Mei, but at this moment, another explosion erupts, sending them all plummeting to the first floor. Mei tries to use this opportunity to escape, but Izumi quickly pins her down and prepares to deliver the final blow. Kouichi rushes in at the last second, seizing her hands and pleading with her to stop. Izumi's fury reaches its peak. She is convinced she's doing what must be done. Initially, she never intended to kill Kouichi, but he leaves her no choice since he's kept protecting Mei. However, just as she resolves to strike him down, lightning crashes against the hotel, shattering the windows. In that instant, memories flood Izumi's mind. She recalls standing by the riverbank a year and a half ago, overwhelmed with frustration. Her canned coffee slipped from her grasp. When she reached for it, she fell. Just then, a boy appeared, offering his hand to help her up. It was Kouichi. Upon standing, she broke into tears, confessing that someone close to her had just died. To her surprise, Kouichi responded that he too was mourning a loss. Back in the present, blood seeps from Izumi's wounds, glass shards embedded deep in her body. Mei, whose eye patch has been taken off, sees the undeniable color of death surrounding her. Kouichi gently moves Izumi's body, and with her final breaths she reveals that she had met him before a year and a half ago. And with that, she closes her eyes forever. A split second later, a barrage of lightning strikes the hotel and triggers a series of deafening explosions. He realizes that Mei is gone. He quickly calls her the moment he gets a signal. To his relief, Mei picks up. She tells him she's in the backyard. Without hesitation, Kouichi rushes to find her. When he finally reaches Mei, she's standing in front of a massive fallen tree branch. Underneath it, someone is struggling to free themselves. Kouichi thinks they should save that person, but Mei says they can't, because that person is the dead person. Mei already knew about it for quite some time, but she didn't know how to tell Kouichi. But now, she has no choice but to end it. She tightens the grip around the axe in her hands. Slowly, the person under the tree trunk pulls themselves free. When Kouichi finally sees their face, a wave of shock and horror washes over him. The person is Ms. Mikami, also known as Reiko. Koichi's memories flood back. He quickly recalls the time he was listening to Reiko's warning about the school. The last thing she reminded him, and the one he couldn't remember before, was to keep their family relationship separate from her role as a teacher. At school, she was Ms. Mikami, not his Aunt Reiko. The realization strikes harder as Mei explains that the number of seats in the classroom had always been correct, meaning the extra seat did not belong in the classroom. It was in the teacher's office. Reiko, now fully exposed, begs for her life as Mei prepares to strike, but Kouichi steps forward. He bites his teeth and announces that he's the one who's going to end it. Then he takes the axe from Mei's hands. Kouichi raises the weapon but hesitates. Doubt creeps in, questioning whether Mei is truly right. For a moment, he cannot bring himself to go through with it. But then, Mei reveals that she had witnessed Reiko's death. 1.5 years ago, Reiko was stabbed by a crazy man and fell into the river. Everything suddenly falls into place for Kouichi. His father's question about returning to Yomiyama after 1.5 years, Izumi's memory of meeting him during that same period. It all makes sense. 1.5 years ago, Kouichi visited Yomiyama to attend Reiko's funeral. At last, Kouichi assures himself. Tears well up in his eyes as he says goodbye to Reiko for the last time. And finally, he swings his axe, ending Reiko's life. As the weight of it all crashes down on him, pain erupts in his chest. Then he passes out. Sometime later, Kouichi, Mei, and Mr. Chibiki visit the Mikami family's grave. By now, no one in class remembers Ms. Mikami. The curse has claimed the lives of 7 students. The hotel managers are revealed to be Ikuo's grandparents, who had lost their grip on reality after his death. Reiko had originally died around 2 years ago when the curse was active, only to return this year as the dead person. Among the names on the list of deceased individuals from that year, the name Akazawa also appears. It turns out that he and Izumi were cousins. In the end, the curse is broken, at least for this year, to help future students of class 3-3. Naoya records the method for ending the curse and burns it onto a CD, similar to what Katsumi once did. However, he adds a crucial message. They should have a proper discussion with their classmates before deciding to do anything, so that they don't have any regrets. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.